Welcome back to Explaining Everything, the channel where we dive into the stories and mysteries behind everyday things. Today's question comes from one of our curious viewers, Fordman42. Thanks for the suggestion, Fordman. You asked, who discovered bacteria? If you've ever had a cold, seen mold on bread, or been told to wash your hands for the 100th time, you've already met bacteria. You just can't see them. For most of history, people thought sickness came from bad air, curses, or even angry spirits. But one curious man from the 1600s decided to take a closer look. And I mean really close. What he found changed how we see life forever. Literally. So if you've ever wondered who was the first brave soul to peek into the microscopic world and discover those tiny, wiggly creatures living all around us, stick around. Because today, we're zooming in on the story of how bacteria were discovered. Right here on Explaining Everything. Our story begins in the 1600s, a time when science often meant mixing weird chemicals and hoping nothing exploded. In the Dutch city of Delft lived a cloth merchant named Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. Yes, that's a mouthful, but don't worry, we'll just call him Tony for now. Tony wasn't a scientist by training. He didn't have a fancy lab coat or a degree. He sold cloth. That's it. But Tony was obsessed with lenses. You know, the tiny glass pieces used in magnifying glasses and microscopes. He used them to inspect the quality of fabrics. But one day, he thought, what if I look at other things with this lens? That one question, fueled by curiosity and probably a lot of boredom, changed the course of science. Tony didn't just make microscopes, he perfected them. His handmade lenses could magnify up to 270 times, far better than anything else in his time. That's like using a telescope, but in reverse. So Tony starts looking around, first at fabric fibers, then at insects, then at tiny bits of plants, and then, for reasons known only to him, he decided to look at his own tooth gunk. Yep, he scraped plaque from his teeth, popped it under the microscope, and boom, he saw life. Tiny creatures swimming around like they were late for a microscopic pool party. He called them animalcules, which basically means tiny animals. Cute, right? He described them as very prettily moving. I mean, Tony, you're looking at bacteria. Maybe pretty isn't the word I'd go for, but okay. When Leeuwenhoek shared his findings with the Royal Society of London, basically the Avengers of science, they were skeptical. Imagine a cloth merchant writing in saying, "Hey, I found a whole new world of invisible creatures in my mouth." You'd probably think he'd been sniffing too much fabric dye. So the scientists did what scientists do. They checked, and sure enough, they saw the same wiggly little creatures. That's when everyone realized the world is teeming with life too small for the naked eye to see. Antonie had just discovered bacteria without even knowing what bacteria were. He was the first human in history to actually see them. Here's the crazy part. Leeuwenhoek didn't even know what he'd really found. He just knew there were tiny things moving in water, in his mouth, in anything that wasn't sterilized, which back then was basically everything. He didn't realize these creatures were responsible for diseases, decay, and all sorts of biological magic. That connection wouldn't come until nearly 200 years later, when scientists like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch showed that bacteria cause infections and illnesses. But still, none of that would have been possible without Leeuwenhoek's "I wonder what this looks like under my microscope" moment. You could say he was the original influencer of the microscopic world. No camera, no Instagram, just pure curiosity. Over his lifetime, Leeuwenhoek made more than 500 microscopes and sent hundreds of letters to scientists describing his discoveries. Sperm cells, red blood cells, yeast, and yes, bacteria. The man was unstoppable. And he wasn't just curious, he was also incredibly secretive. He never shared exactly how he made his high-quality lenses. It was his trade secret, kind of like how Coca-Cola guards its recipe. So when he died in 1723, he took the secret of his lenses to the grave. To this day, scientists still admire his craftsmanship. Some of his microscopes survived, and when tested, they turned out to be even more powerful than many people thought possible for his era. It's wild. The first person to see bacteria wasn't a doctor or biologist, but a guy just peeking at stuff through glass in his spare time. So the next time you brush your teeth, think about Antonie van Leeuwenhoek, the man who first saw the tiny universe living inside your mouth. Without him, we might still believe sickness came from evil spirits or bad air. Thanks to his curiosity, we learn that sometimes it's just bacteria. And that's the story of how one curious cloth merchant discovered an entire hidden world, one teeming with microscopic life. If you enjoyed this dive into the microscopic world, hit that like button and subscribe for more everyday mysteries. And if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other bingeable channels. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next time here in the channel that answers all the why, what, who, where, and how questions you've always wondered about, here on Explaining Everything.